K-2 teachers who complete structured literacy training know the science of reading inside and out. The 5 pillars, the scope and sequence, the explicit modeling, it all makes perfect sense in the workshop. Then Monday morning arrives. You face 22 students with wildly different needs. To reach every single one of them, you spend your evening sorting raw assessment data, adapting generic materials, and manually building individualized plans that actually fit your small groups. When instruction falls short, it is rarely a lack of skill. The bottleneck is execution at scale. Delivering highly individualized, explicit instruction to 24 children without a dedicated support staff requires more hours than exist in a day. We can close that gap using 3 specific AI-assisted workflows. These workflows reclaim hours of weekly prep time while strictly preserving your professional judgment. These tools automate the raw data synthesis, leaving you free to focus entirely on the high-impact relational instruction that requires a human being. The standard diagnostic cycle requires scoring screeners, cross-referencing every result with a scope and sequence, and drafting a grouping plan for the next 2 weeks. Done manually for 20 students, this takes 2 to 3 uninterrupted hours. Step 1 changes that timeline. You take your assessment scores, along with your rough observational notes, and input them into an AI assistant that you have already loaded with your district's specific scope and sequence. This timeline shows how the system processes that data instantly. It identifies clusters of students who share the exact same skill gaps and proposes a logical instructional target for each group based on your sequence. Then you step in. You review the draft and adjust the groups based on what you know about the children. If a student is experiencing instability at home and needs a predictable routine more than an accelerated pace, you make the call to adjust their placement. What used to be an exhausting 2 to 3 hours of manual synthesis drops to roughly 15 minutes of generating and reviewing a draft. Your expertise has not been sidelined. It has been laser-focused on interpretation and course correction rather than raw data sorting. A true decodable text is highly controlled. It must exclusively use phonemes the student has already mastered, plus the single new target pattern being introduced this week. Control is the entire point. Finding passages that perfectly match your specific district sequence is frustrating. Teachers often spend significant time adapting generic texts or writing their own sentences from scratch to ensure the vocabulary is actually decodable. Step 2 eliminates that heavy lift. You prompt the AI with a strict list of the student's mastered correspondences, the new target phoneme, and a simple thematic preference, like an autumn setting, to generate a draft text. But AI tools make errors. They will inevitably include words that look simple to a computer, but actually contain complex, untaught phonics patterns that the student cannot yet decode. This is why you must intervene. You read through the draft, line by line, catching any patterns that snuck in, and editing the vocabulary to fit your students. Human review is a strict requirement. If you manage multiple reading levels at once, this is a massive advantage. You can simultaneously generate 3 different sequence drafts for your various groups and review them in parallel. Your prep time plummets from 45 minutes down to 10. But if you skip that crucial review step, you send students a text that violates the decodable principle and undermines the entire lesson. Progress monitoring usually ends in dead data, a fluency score archived in a binder until a quarterly review. That does not help you improve tomorrow morning's lesson. Step 3 creates a live loop. After your weekly progress monitoring, you feed your latest fluency probe scores and brief observational notes directly into your AI assistant. This flowchart illustrates how the system synthesizes those numbers with your observations. It instantly flags students whose data shows they are pacing ahead and ready for the next skill, and identifies those who require a loopback for reteaching. You then apply the context the AI lacks. If a low fluency score was caused by a recent car accident or a stressful week, rather than a true skill deficit, you manually override the recommendation. This workflow turns the monitoring cycle into a prospective 2-week draft that directly feeds your next instructional cycle in near real time. Across all 3 of these workflows, the rule remains absolute. AI surfaces patterns and drafts materials. The teacher reviews every single output before it reaches a student. Your judgment dictates the final content. In a faith-integrated school, for example, an AI-generated story about Halloween might lack the appropriate context. You intercept that text and replace it so it aligns with your classroom culture. This human-in-the-loop requirement aligns with global guidelines for the safe integration of generative AI in education. Delegating the menial cross-referencing protects your time and your energy. It allows you to sit beside a struggling reader, fully present, building the trust that makes them willing to try again when a word is hard. The entry point is simple. Choose one of these workflows, run it tomorrow morning before the bell rings, and observe the results. Explicit instruction works. It works best when teachers strategically use tools to clear the clutter, protecting their energy for the relational work that actually changes lives.